Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed Unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Elections 2023 is Caliphate's push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Over the next an hour plus, we'll be sharing ideas, experiences, and insights related to today's topic. Nigeria's unitary constitution is the problem. Our goals for this meeting are to help us to understand the key problem, that Nigeria's unitary constitution is the tap from which our woes and miseries flow. We'll also highlight the solution, the mechanism, and the action we must now take for the joint jailbreak and union reset. Let's get started with a moment of reflection as we listen to two Nina's broadcasts entitled Things That Will Not Change under 1999 Constitution, no matter who becomes the president, part 1 and 4. A question and answer section and comments period will be held immediately after the Nina's spokesperson's presentation, allowing audience to ask questions and share their thoughts. Thank you for listening to the broadcast.
Recall that as the elections of 2023 approached, the parties were supposed to commence their campaigns on the 28th of September in 2022. But on the 26th of September, Ninas did take out an advertorial in Guardian newspaper, as you can see, to pose advanced 10 interrogatories addressed to the political parties that were heading to elections under the 1999 Constitution that guarantee all kinds of evil. We challenged the media at the time, and those who were clapping and cheering for one political party or the other, to question those candidates, to question those political parties with these interrogatories, because Nina's position is that those interrogatories were basically things that will not change or improve from the election, no matter who emerged. We wanted the discussions leading to the election to revolve around asking the candidates that are promising all kinds of Eldorados. Oh, we're going to take you to heaven. The other one says, oh, we're going to take you to, the moon. We were, if we who were looking for change, everybody that was canvassing support for one party or the other probably wanted something to change. Those who were supporting P2B wanted to see an end to corruption, wanted to see an end to impunity, wanted to see, the emergence of rule of law, all kinds of things. Those who were supporting Atiku had their reasons and all of that. But if you're going to get anything different from what you've been living with, and that there's a constitution by which all of those who have been managing Nigeria since 1999 have been managing Nigeria, and Nigeria has become this dark, this bad. Ninas wanted to raise the discussion because our prescription is that no improvement can be, attained under that constitution. Generally, things will only get worse until it all collapses into some commotion, some very heavy commotion. And therefore, election has now come and gone. You can see the kind of outcome we have. And we have a second chance. Since the election is inconclusive, the presidential election, and we have fallen into an interregnum, a period without legitimate government. We have a second chance now to focus on these interrogatories. Those things Nina say will not change no matter who emerges president, so that we can take the decision, we can go to the decision of whether we really need to continue to waste our time on matter of who will get to government house or how to go to any election at all. The error of going to 2023 election under the 1999 Constitution is staring everybody in the face. But because the matter is now in a logjam, nobody has emerged, we might as well rest that doomed voyage for with its outcome so far and go to transition. And if anybody now wants to know why Nina say nothing will improve, let's go in a 4-part broadcast. We're going to take those 10 points of interrogation, which we call interrogatories, to open up what the Constitution has to do with the killings you see, with the corruption you see, with the impunity you see, with the electoral rigging and hate you see, with the infrastructural decay you see, such that no matter who becomes president, those things will not improve or change or go away, because it's like leaving the tap on. As long as that constitution is standing, the tap is on. Those things will flow, no matter who is president. And because, more particularly because the mandate of the president does not extend to changing constitution. Not even the National Assembly. Constitution making is a business of the people. And so, we very quickly get to the first one. We had indicated that we see the subsidy that has been removed now, and people are gearing up. People are already feeling the bite everywhere. Businesses are already collapsing. More will happen. Inflation is jumping through the roof. And so we said fuel, the matter of availability of petroleum products. In that interrogatory, we said the reason we are talking about subsidy is because we are importing petroleum, because we are paying in dollar for products we have to consume here, and our naira is not strong enough. So by the time you bring it to the pump, you discover that how much you spent cannot, the people cannot pay all of it, and then you begin to talk about subsidy. If you ask why are we importing, it's because we are not refining. We have 3 million barrels of crude oil to take from. We need only 10% of that to service the local demand 100%. But why are we not refining? It is because refineries are on the exclusive list of the 1999 Constitution. There is no solution to availability of petroleum products. Labour Congress, listen to it. Nigerian students hear it. The market unions, listen to it. All of those who will soon pour out to the streets to say, oh, we don't agree anymore. The reason you will not have any reprieve, any improvement on the question of availability of petroleum products is that refineries are on the exclusive list. And in that exclusive list, the federal government decide what will happen. We have seen what they've done with the 4 refineries in Kaduna and Port Harcourt and Warri. We have seen how they have licensed one Fulani man in monopoly, Dangote, to refine for all of. It's all because it's on that exclusive list. If that constitution goes down today, refineries will become something that everybody with capacity can go to do, like it happens in other countries. And there's no reason why we can't process even the entire stock of our 2-3 million barrels of crude oil every day, providing the employment it has to generate at home, instead of exporting it by the import of a finished product. There's no other solution to that problem except we want to deceive ourselves. As it is with, petroleum subsidy, the electricity, you hear about what's it called, the increase, impending increase in tariff again. The little SMEs that are, still managing to survive running generator, now with the price of petrol that have jumped through the roof, they are going to shut down. Many of them already shut down. The little augmentation that comes from electricity, the public supply, they say they want to increase. So more jobs are going to be lost. More difficulties are going to be introduced to individuals and businesses that rely on energy for what they do. There's no solution to that problem because it is electricity generation and transmission that is locked down by that constitution. Forget about the talk of amendment that Buhari was signing the day he was leaving office. The amendment is signed about how the states can now generate. Those things are cosmetic. When you get into the contents of it, you discover that the raw material, what you need to produce that electricity that you have now been licensed to, is a fraud. What the states need to generate electricity is still on the exclusive list. If you need gas, for instance, or petroleum, or even to run turbine, whatever it is you need to be the source of that electricity is still on that exclusive list, so that the state that is thinking that it can go and get electricity will still have to depend on federal government for the gas that is on the exclusive list. So there's nothing that has changed, will change with electricity as long as that concern is standing. If you want electricity to come back within the range of prices you can afford, let us insist that constitution that ties down the generation and transmission capacity goes down. It is the Constitution 1999 that is the reason you don't have electricity. It's the reason you won't have electricity. It doesn't matter whether P2B or Tinubu become president. As it is for the two, we come to the question of insecurity. Arms and ammunition are on that exclusive list. As long as the arms and ammunition sit on that exclusive list, there's nothing that will improve the security, because those who are living in that insecurity are not, the states are not able to organize. If they know their terrain, they're not able to organize what could become security for their people. You wait for the federal government that doesn't know where the problem is to organize your security. In a federation, it should not be so. Everything you are told will be done to improve security is going to fail except that constitution goes down. We are telling you something you can verify. There are lawyers amongst you. There are people you can ask. The media. Why is the media not asking these questions? Why is the media not taking it up with the people who are pretending they have other solutions? The political parties, the people, the candidates in the election, the people who are now advertising all kinds of other ways they are going to solve these problems. We challenge the media to go to that Guardian publication of September 26, 2022, the 10-point interrogatory of Ninas, to raise those questions that are there, to ask these people who are advertising how they're going to solve these problems different, to say, how are you going to solve electricity if it is locked down by the exclusive list? How are you going to solve petroleum product availability if refineries are locked down there? How are you going to solve security if arms and ammunition are locked down there? Until those things are the taps from where all these evils flow. We have identified it. If you want to continue to live in it and die in it, it will be your choice. But if you want to come out of it, it is not the question of who gets to government house or who provides better leadership. It is turn off the tap. That constitution must go down for any of these things to change. It doesn't matter who you try. And why do we continue to waste our time for? Who will come to mop for us? Because that's what it boils down to, mopping. Can't we turn off the tap? By insisting that we turn off the tap, we stop there.
That's it. End of part 1. We go over to part 4.
Yes, part 4 of the Nina's interrogatories. Things that will not change no matter who becomes president. For which reason we should abandon the talk of whose turn it is or who has emerged to go to transition for union reconstruction. In this final part, we'll be looking at the practical rejection of the union from various parts, which, unless you address the concerns, unless you address the issues that that are responsible for all those things people are doing to demonstrate that they are allegiance has departed from your Nigeria. You continue to go in circles no matter who is president. Let us start looking at the map of Nigeria you see here. You see the section in yellow, 12 contiguous states. Simultaneously imposed Sharia in year 2000, meaning that they consulted. It was the State House of Assembly that did all of what was done. Their governors signed such things into such those legislations into law and set up the Hisbah, the Sharia police that have been enforcing. They've never repealed any of those laws. The same way they pass them, they may tell you, oh, it's a joke. Sharia does not exist. But it exists in Kano, destroying people's business. It exists in Sokoto, destroying people's business. And so we come down to section 10. Let's listen very carefully. For those who may think that these are troublemakers who don't wish Nigeria well, Nigeria, the Federation, is not what we are discussing. Nigeria, the Federation died a long time ago. But the Nigeria, the unitary state, the monster that is now feeding on the blood of those it's holding by force against the will. It is that Nigeria that has, the Nigeria that should have been our union was agreed to be a secular state. For which reason, Section 10 of the 1999 Constitution, as disputed as it is, Section 10 expressly forbids the adoption of any state religion by the government of the Federation or that of any state. That's no state. The government of the Federation or that of a state shall not adopt any religion as state religion. That's the entire provision of Section 10. And so when in year 2000, these 12 contiguous states that run from Sokoto Kebbi through Kano Jigawa to Borno in the uppermost north of Nigeria simultaneously imposed Sharia, adopted and imposed Sharia and began to implement it, they had seceded from the secular union of Nigeria as dictated by Section 10. That says they should not do such a thing, they should not adopt state religion. And so we were, ordinarily it would have been to go and quarrel with them. But we took a second look at it in this project and we said that this is self-determination that they have exercised. And they went through due process, they consulted among themselves, that was why they could act simultaneously. They are contiguous, they were not picking one here, picking one there, so you don't know how they came about it. They are contiguous, they acted simultaneous. And so it must be that they consulted. But if everybody was in doubt, they went through the due process of their state assemblies passing the law. They also went through the due process of their governors signing and setting up the Hisbah. And so we interpreted it to mean that they had decided to secede from the secular union we were building together with them. They've left the Nigerian union. They've now regrouped and are coming on a conquest mission, knowing that the title, having abandoned their own title deed in that respect, that the constitution by which Nigeria is convened and controlled and managed, they departed from that constitution by imposing Sharia. But they regrouped and they are here now overrunning, invading communities, killing people and bringing their like fully from Mauritania and Senegal and everywhere to come to share the land. They've shared it all the way to Port Harcourt. Look at the tiles on the ground where you are. And you will see the kind of formations in which they are divided up the entire land all the way to Bonny and Badagry in Lagos area, Bonny in River. And so we are saying that it is that is the first practical rejection of the Nigerian Federation by that part. The campaign we are leading was then the response of, because these same people who have imposed Sharia have departed from a union of sanctity of life. Under Sharia, the adherents owe it a duty of faith to kill the infidel. How are we to be in a union where our competitors owe it a duty of faith to kill us? We saw what happened with Gideon Akadoka. We saw what happened with Deborah and Sokoto. We saw what's going on with, we had when Dr. Melafia told us who and who was doing what. We saw what Buhari, the champion of Sharia, and the killings that come with Sharia. The same people adopted in their worldview, their civilization, is that of feudalism. Feudalism. Under Sharia, we were exposed to being killed as infidels. Under their feudalism, we were exposed to being killed too, because in their worldview of feudalism, there's only the master is infuriating to them. Because in feudalism, you can't be talking democracy, because the slaves cannot have equal rights with the master. The reason that people are flying flags, Odua nation, Biafra nation, Ijaw nation, at a time the ones who are doing Sharia had gone their way. So there are practical steps to leave the union. People are holding solemn assemblies and saying we can't proceed on this. None of those things will change. And the reason they are doing so, in case anybody did not understand it, apart from the Sharia belt that has seceded, the feudalist belt that has seceded, the other ones who subscribe to democracy, who subscribe to constitutionalism, they insist on a union of sanctity of life. They insist on a union of equality of men. The Ninas Alliance, the South and the Middle Belt, minimum condition for re-entering, for renegotiating even any form of union. Where we are now is that the union is at an end. Anybody who doesn't understand it will learn the hard way that the constitution has been delegitimized and is going to be decommissioned. Whether we went to a meeting to do so together or it happens unilaterally, because that's where it will go next. In the kind of brigandage we have seen, the kind of killings we have seen, the kind of refusal to listen that we have seen, people pointing guns, union at gunpoint, it's not going to last, it's started too long already. And so, the practical rejection of the union across board is because we have not sat down to agree to be in union and on the terms of that union. The arrival of anybody as president today does not solve that problem by itself, except we go to solving the problem. And it's not the business of government to come and negotiate our sovereignty. It is a sovereign, it is the owners of the sovereignty. The Yoruba that could be a country of its own, or the Yoruba that could be a country of their own, or the Benin Kingdom that was there before Nigeria came. They know their boundaries. And if you go to check the 1885 map of the lower Niger, for instance, you will see where Ijaw land begins and where Igbo land starts. You will see where Ishekiri and Urobo land begin and where Anang and Efik connect. And so, let us understand that in this union dispute that must now be resolved, or the union stands dissolved, we are either discussing now or we are dispersing from this failed union. That's where we are. And election that will produce new president is not the solution to the issues being raised now. And we do not, those people that now want to come and present themselves as president, in the days ahead, there will be somebody who asks them on the street, president of where? Because the constitution that brings us together is dead. Can we come together and give that constitution some kind of decent burial? Or do we want voters to tear it up on the streets like we have seen in other crimes, like we nearly saw in 67 to 70? Those are the options before us. But Minas has placed on the table a peaceful, strategic framework and process for resolving these issues and stopping the pretense that we have a settled union. I think we begin to wind up from there. What are we to do with all this information? We we will then ask those who have been asking, what shall we do from here? You must join us now, knowing that the Constitution is the source of the problem. Hearing this, they say in the mouth of two witnesses, a matter is established. You've heard from the mouth of more than two witnesses. You had up to 7, 8 other witnesses that the Constitution of Nigeria is the problem, it's the source of all the problems we are trying to manage, and it will consume us if we don't solve it. What was the prescription for what to do? That we should make a U-turn. Professor Anthony Akiwale, God bless him, found the courage to tell us that we will have to make a U-turn. If we, and he talked about the Constitution, that is, that we don't have a project. Those are his words. A Catholic priest, that we do not have. He used to be vice chancellor at the Dominican University in Ibadan. We do not have a project. The project we call Nigeria is a scam. It's a fraud against the people you hold here against their will. Union at gunpoint. That's why he described it. That's how he described it. Now that we know, now that we have seen that the Constitution of Nigeria, the Unitary Constitution of Nigeria, is a problem that has to be solved. Not anything else. Not anything else. Leadership that we don't have is because we have a crooked, constitutional arrangement that now brings all these kind of charlatans we see into government house. And so, the action we can take to reverse the situation is to join in declaring that Ninas is right, the Constitution of Nigeria is the problem, the Unitary Constitution of Nigeria is the problem, and elections will not solve that problem. We have to go to transition. Ninas says, let us leave elections, even the one that has been done, that has gone inconclusive, let us go to transition now. Because if we are not going into that transition to resolve this damaged constitutional basis of Nigeria, unilateral actions may overtake everybody, and then it will be something that everybody will regret they didn't act earlier. A word should be enough for the wise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the broadcast. Please join me in welcoming the NINA spokesperson, Mr. Tony Nadi. He will be sharing his wisdom on today's topic, Nigeria's Unitary Constitution is the problem. His presentation promises to be informative, engaging, and thought-provoking. Sir, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome everybody once more. The purpose of today's town hall, I'm sure some of us, as requested, had gone through the graphics that we sent along as a preparatory material for this session, titled. There are two of them. When printed, I have them right before me here. When printed, the front page will be in the one you have 5 boxes titled "Final Steps to Initiating Joint Jailbreak." Now, final steps to initiating joint jailbreak and union reset. Now, what are we talking about joint jailbreak and union reset? What NINA set out to do all the while, which has been taken step by step as designed across the last 25 years, from the day that 1999 Constitution was imposed, that's back in 1999, we had to dress back from lamentations to begin to work out how we're going to come out of it. Because it didn't come in 1999, it came in 1979. And by the time it was toppled in 19 83, the 1979 Constitution that was imposed by the brigandage of Murtala Mohammed, initiated in 1975. And even before that 1975, it was the counter coup of July 29, 1966 that became the point at which the Federation of Nigeria collapsed. The military elements from northern region of the time, Ahmadu Bello's boys, declared Araba. They declared secession from the Union. They actually moved the capital to Ilorin. It was the British that jumped in to stop them from, going finally, because it was at that point in the middle of 1966 that the British whispered to them what quantity of crude oil they were taking away, and that if the eastern region, if the north goes away, that the east will go away with a huge oil and gas asset. And they already moved. So the British they said, look, we can't cope with these people. They are ahead of us in all things. They have more education than us. They have more exposure. We better just go and begin to fend for ourselves now. Otherwise, we'll go from the frying pan of British rule to the fire of internal colonialism of the South. The British say, leave it to us. Sign here. That was how Gowon signed off. Eventually, for them, 50 years ownership and control of the oil and gas assets of Eastern Nigeria. That PIB bill, that's a petroleum industry bill that was forever before the National Assembly. There was really nothing anybody could do to change any important thing in it, because the basis of the oil industry at the time Nigeria began to, because before then, Britain has sold this oil for quite a while, over 50 years. Before declaring Ala-Igbo, it was the approach of independence that made them declare Ala-Igbo in 1957. To say, 56, 57. To say, it's like we have found something here. But that was not the whole truth. They have sold the oil and gas of Eastern Nigeria for no less than 50 years before declaring that Ala-Igbo. And even in that declaring, they didn't declare the quantity. They say, it's like it might be in commercial quantities. They were lying until the crisis came in January of 1966, and then the counter coup of July, in which Murtala Mohammed and co, because it was Murtala Mohammed that led the charge. They began by killing the Ironsi, killed all the Igbo officers they could find in all the locations, and then went into town and started killing the people everywhere they found them. Nobody had accounted for all of those. The people who did it are the class of 66, those genocide generals that are still loafing all over the place, hanging around like demons and vultures, having shared everything among themselves as booty of war. That is the basis of the oil blocks we hear about and all the other concessions. The oil and gas free zone, all of those things are concessions. Those are things they shared. Find out the ownership structures of all those who control the Lagos port, who control the Port Harcourt port, private people. And so, we are saying that the federation we have collapsed between that 66 and the May of 67, when they now capped the regions into 12 states, with the illicit federal government that emerged from the collapse of the federation, taking over the economic assets of the regions. That was how Nigeria effectively ceased to be a federation. Now, we have been locked into that unitary arrangement they began to impose by decree, which in 1975, the same Murtala Mohammed came back, the same 29th of July in 1975, 9 years after the first coming. The first task he gave out was for the drafting of a constitution to more or less codify everything they've got by brigandage. So the Nigeria that people are trying to, the unitary Nigeria that people are trying to build up and make great again, does not exist. That Nigeria is a farce. That Nigeria is a scam. The Nigeria that we committed to was the Federation of Nigeria that died on the 27th of May 1967. Between Lieutenant Colonel Gowon, Yakubu, and his right-hand man, or ringleader, junior in rank, but he was the one doing the killings, Murtala Mohammed. I'm sure some of you saw a recent article, I think it was 2 days ago, I saw it, something called from a book called Blood on the Niger. The British media described Murtala Mohammed as the butcher of Asaba. If you want anybody in government in England to understand who we are talking about, just tell them the butcher of Asaba. That's how Mohammed, that's the fame of Murtala Mohammed that Nigeria praises. That Nigeria named the East International Airport in Lagos after. That Nigeria printed on its currency, expecting people, expecting the survivors of that genocide to spend that currency and hoping that that currency will stand and not die. That currency is dying in their hands. These are some of the things killing Nigeria. And so, where we are now is that from that 75, they codified what they got by brigandage, and then pretending to be the federal government. Because you can't have a federal government without a federation. The illicit unitary, the government they call the federal government is basically a unitary government wearing the garment of a federal government. And then they found the willing tools from all over the place. Those who want to be governor of state, those who want to be senator on state. States. How did we come about the states? All of them, 36 in number now. Make a map of Nigeria and put on that map all of those who created all those states and see what you see. So it was the let us remind everybody that at the time Gowon was doing all of these things, they lived in Zaria, Usasa, some place in Zaria. So he became plateau later. He became, when they now began to do all kinds of things, you know, when the caliphate began to share their booty, it dawned on him that he wasn't one of them. So what happened in 1970 in the coup of 76, where they decapitated most of the officers from the Middle Belt. Gowon was in London. They said he was the ringleader. He was the brain behind the coup. Bisala, Dimka, all of them, they decapitated officers from the Middle Belt. This same caliphate trying to establish absolute control over the entire country. And so that was the setting in which we got to 1975, that according to the vision of Ahmadu Bello, everything that Ahmadu Bello wished for in that 1960 proclamation of his, that battle script and mission statement of 1960, was what they transformed into constitution. Because look at them, put them on the map again, you will see the inheritors from the Caliphate North. You will see the minorities of the of the North, that is the Middle Belt, who they deployed as willing tools. That's why you see the Gowon, that's why you see the Danjuma, that's why you see the Mayuseni, and all of them. 80% of the killings that happened in the East, in that period, was from that part. The people who did the shooting on behalf of that caliphate. Some of them now realize they were used because they are slaughtering their own people right now. But up to this date, Nigeria has not owned up to the genocide. You go and kill off 3.5 million people by our own account, but the Gowon instead said they had to kill 5 million people to keep Nigeria one. You go and kill 3.5 or 5 million, because if Gowon say 5 million, maybe he was counting those who died in that invasion, because there were people who were also killed on the Nigerian side as they were coming to kill in the East. Research the Abagana ambush. Research the Abagana ambush to see some of the things that happened in that war. Find out how many times Murtala Mohammed tried to cross River Niger and what happened to all the troops that tried to cross with him. If not for this British in the background, organizing the rest of the world powers of the time against the Eastern Nigeria and the Biafra, it became. I tell you, the matter was already on the reverse from where it ended. And so we are talking about the Nigeria that we now describe as the Caliphate prison, because it was that instruction of Murtala Muhammad that became the constitution that emerged in 1979. They finished the draft. Ben Wabeje, at the invitation of Rotimi Williams, finished the draft of Murtala Muhammad. Then Murtala Muhammad got killed in February 1976. Then Obasanjo came in. Of course, the Caliphate prevailed on him. He must have covenanted with them to process exactly what was, drafted to become constitution and to hand power to a Fulani man in 1979. He did the two. The Constituent Assembly they set up in 1977, which was supposed to be like the kind of nasty suggestions climbing out all over the place. You had Emeka Anyoko talking about the Constituent Assembly that will now come and draft a constitution, 5 representatives per state. You now begin to construct the House of Nigeria from the roof again. With all the exposure of Emeka Anyoko, I am not prepared to accept that he does not know what he is doing, or that he does not know that the constitution for a federation, the federation in the first place cannot have one constitution. Emeka Anyoko knows that. He cannot convince me that he does not know. Secondly, the process by which it will emerge, because it's a federation, you have to identify the sovereignties that you are trying to federate, trying to unionize. That is why it is a federation. These are units that could have been countries of their own. Or are you suggesting, is anybody in this meeting going to suggest that Yoruba of 60 million people could not have been country of their own? Or a job that is spread between rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, all the way to Edo, some in Akwa Ibom? Are you suggesting that go to that map of 1885 and see the territory and tell me how many countries in Europe, apart from Germany and France and Britain, that will be bigger than that Ijo? There are several countries in Europe today that will be smaller than that Ijo that looks like it doesn't exist in Nigeria, because they deliberately carved them out into 5 states to be minorities in all those places. Apart from Bayelsa, where they now they shrunk them into go to Yenagua and fight and kill yourself. You see what's going on in Port Harcourt now, because they've never, on their own, in their numbers, they will never get to government house in Port Harcourt. If not for the brigand, if not for the shenanigans and the gambits of our man in Abuja, who was eating he always eating his cake and having it back. He's not in PDP today, he's not in APC today, yet he's in charge of everything. So back to where we are now. We are telling our people that all of what we had to do to dismantle this entire edifice of evil, edifice of fraud. The reason we always go back to the history of it, so that people can know this constitution did not fall from the sky. It was the Fulani conquest agenda, very succinctly enunciated by the Ahmadu Bello in 1960, in October 1960, exactly as he dictated it. That it must be the estate of their great-grandfather. That on no account will the power equation be allowed to change. That they will use the minorities of the Middle Belt as willing tools and the South as a conquered territory, never allowing them to rule over the South to rule over them, any of these other people to rule over the Caliphate, and never allowing them control over their own future. Look at it and see what has emerged as constitution, and see who has played what role. Olusegun Obasanjo was the head slave. Because when they say South as a conquered territory, anybody who will be in the master's planning place in that, from that conquered territory is only a slave, house slave. So Obasanjo was the head slave who was used to enforce that vision to become 1979 Constitution, because the Constituent Assembly that was set up by Dr. Obasanjo at the demise of Murtala Mohammed in 77 tried to remove all kinds of things that they knew would not work, because it was mostly the same politicians who saw what happened in 1967. They knew what would work. They knew as a federation what needed to be done, and so they did not accept those states that they have carved the regions into. They wanted a return to the regions that federated. They wanted, a return to a parliamentary system. Otherwise, presidential system will accumulate the kind of power that we have seen now. They wouldn't have accepted NYSC into the place. NYSC decree that was imposed since 1973. They tried to smuggle the Constituent Assembly threw it away. There was also the land use decree that came in 1978. All those things were in draft. They were trying to smuggle it in to be in Constitution. Constituent Assembly rejected all these things. But on the 21st of September 1978, Olusegun Obasanjo, as head of state, went on national broadcast and introduced 17 amendments to the finished work of the Constituent Assembly. Go and research it. That was how we went back from the regions that should have been restored into the states they had created. Of course, Mohammed had added his own, so it was 19 at the point. That was how we ended up with presidential system. We have now seen the calamity it became. That's how NYSC found its way from the back door into that constitution of 79. That's how Land Use Act and all kinds of other atrocities that have brought Nigeria to what it is now. And what is that Nigeria without the Nigerians? The unitary Nigeria is exactly like the British business enterprise that was set up in 1914 without reference to the owners of the land. It was British, enterprise with their local agent they call the Caliphate. And they've been evading the owners all the way to this moment in 2024. They've never allowed the owners of the sovereignties near the place of discussion for what will be union, or how the union will be structured, or how the union will be governed. It had always been imposition after imposition, even when they pretend to call a Constituent Assembly, the type Emeka Anyoko is calling for now, that will go and sit in Abuja. Whereas there are 3 steps. Anything that is short of these 3 steps, dictated by what you see in that preamble, dictated by what you see in that 14.2a that says sovereignty belongs to the peoples of Nigeria, from whom government through this constitution derives all its powers and authority. So even the framers of that, the authors of that constitution admitted that sovereignty belongs to the constituent peoples of Nigeria, who will then agree among themselves to unionize and to define the formations and structure and all kinds of details. It is when they've done that that you now go and write down, because you see, you identify them first. Yoruba, do you want to be in union with Fulani and Ijo? Igbo, do you want to be in union with the Chief and Berom? That is you have to identify who the people are. Because there are people with PhD all over the place. Some of them lawyers, some of them senior advocates, some of them professor. They think that we the people is just any group of people that some will say, are the soldiers not Nigerians? Why are you talking as if they're not Nigerians? Are we talking about any group of drunkards you meet in any biapalo? We are talking about people who are mandated by constituent powers. Yoruba will sit down in Yoruba land. It could be Ibadan, it could be Abeokuta. They will sit down, select those who will have to, they will decide at home to be in union with the rest of Nigeria. That's the first decision. They will then make out their charter. What is the minimum condition they will want to see to belong to that union? It will be reduced into writing, because it will become the federating constitution for them. They will then say, Lagbaja and co, 10 of you, 5 of you. You see, this is the draft. This is our own charter by which we could be control of our own. But other people will be coming with their own charter, because we want to discuss union. when you get there, we must retain control of our security in whatever you are going to be negotiating. The one that you can't negotiate is for gun to be in the hand of people who are not of force in any arrangement that will be reached. The one we cannot negotiate is for our economic assets to be in the hand of anybody else. These are the things they will stipulate at that first layer, so that the people who are mandated to go and meet with other people, because Ijo will do their own, the other people will do their own, and they will come as if they are back to Lancaster House to decide whether they want to be in union, because it is by their coming together with their charters that they will now have something that will become agreement. So we go from that section 1428 that I talked about down back to the preamble to the Constitution, so that we can see the problem we're about to solve now, because we're going to solve it whether anybody wants it or not. That preamble that lied that we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, meaning that the Yoruba, the Ijo, the Igbo, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live together as one indivisible nation, it presupposes that all these nationalities which have been identified and which are committed to being in union are the ones now discussing, because you can't firmly and solemnly agree to be in union forever without discussing with the people you are going to unionize with. Did that happen in 1977 that became 79? No. They selected their friends from all over the place to come to do some jamboree in Abuja, in wherever they met. I think it was Lagos at the time, you know, and Awolowo stayed away because he was informed that they have already drafted the constitution they wanted. And so it is only when you identify the owners and they come with the mandate of the that is the power that the National Assembly does not have. That is what is called the constituent powers. The power to commit your land, your sovereignty, your people into a union, because then you will detect what you are going to keep, which that union will not have to manage for you, like European Union. Did Germany give up its sovereignty? They're still a Germany, responsible for the electricity of its people, responsible for the security of its people, responsible for the infrastructure of its people. They're still a France, responsible for the railways of its people. There's a Portugal, there's a Belgium, but there's a European Union. They came with their constitutions together, retained all of what they wanted to retain, and said, look, instead of all of us printing our various currencies, the other people who have dollar across the water there, their currencies will be stronger than our own if we are now printing all this type of small units of, let us have a currency that behind which will stand our economies, together, meaning that currency will command some weight, some respect on the global stage. That's how the euro came. And so they decided in our defense, they agreed to be in NATO, let all of us organize our military, but we do it in such a way that we can act together. And so it became part of what has now become NATO. They have what we call a military alliance. They have economic alliance. They agreed on the movement of their people. What are the documentations that people from France will need to be able to operate in Germany and elsewhere? All those little things. It is the constituent components that will donate the powers that the federation will have. The federal government, whatever the union government. It is what they agree to mandate the union office to do for all of them, that union office will do. That is what a federation is. That was what we agreed to be. That was what made us one political union at the point in 1960 when the British were departing. And in the upturning of all those things, you have been told who and who did what to upturn it into what we have now, in which that union office became the owner of all these sovereignties that could have been countries of their own, lumping them together with one constitution. And it is that one constitution in which they claimed that we the people solemnly resolved to live forever together, and therefore made and gave unto us the following constitution. Three very heavy lies, because there was never any invitation to the peoples of Nigeria as the peoples of the owners of sovereignty. The Constituent Assembly they called did not represent that at all, because it was just who they knew, who they wanted to call. Those people did not have the constituent powers that should have been given to them by their own people from home to say, here's the map of the place, here's our constitution, to be control of our own. But if we have to be in union with others, these are the things you have to go and negotiate. If it's less than that, we go back and be control of our own. That's what happens in such a meeting to unionize. If Lancaster House meetings did not succeed, those three regions will have gone their way. They were already governing themselves before they went to Lancaster. Their constitutions were already operating before they went to that meeting in Lancaster House. So, at what point did we lose our sovereignty? Because it is an incident of your sovereignty to be the owner of your land, to be the owner of your economic assets, to have the power to defend yourself with gun in that space, to have the power to generate your own electricity, to have the power to conduct your elections. If there's a federal government or federal parliament, it is who you elect that you send. You process by yourself. Otherwise, your enemies will be the ones deciding who will represent you and who will govern you, like INEC has done, like the centralized electoral machinery of Nigeria's Unitary Constitution has done to us. So people can sit in one corner of Kara Namoda or one corner of Katsina and decide who will be governor in your place, who will be in your House of Assembly. Because if INEC chairman comes with a exercise book, they will begin to write in all the people. That's why you see all the people from your part, when elections is coming close, they will go and get turban in the place. They have to go and show themselves to be approved, even those who want to be governor. Because if you don't go and make your way straight, INEC will substitute you at the last minute. INEC will create a problem for you. INEC already has instruction on who can be governor in any place, on who can be senator in any place, all the way down to your House of Assembly. And they are now inching towards local government. They are now inching towards local government, the one they call local government autonomy. And people with education are not able to sit down and reason. Why would the federal government be the one to conduct the election in your community? When 5% of local government grants monthly allocation is the salary of the traditional rulers. So Abuja will now be responsible for who becomes your council chairman and who becomes your councillor. Your land is gone. Because is it not those traditional rulers that manage the community lands? So if the only money that comes to them is the 5% of local, don't you see where their loyalty will be, where their money comes from? Because government is no longer involved. So they send you that money directly, and INEC will now take over the conduct of elections. That is what people with education are discussing with Nigeria that already quarantine them into enslavement by 68 items on exclusively. The states are groveling at the feet of an omnipotent federal government under the 68 items of exclusive list we have already. So that monster, that caliphate, unitary federal government is now inching down to your community, in which your governor will no longer be able to even help you. He already is helpless. But at least when local government elections will happen, nobody from afar is involved on how local government let us put all this madness aside, go back to where the starting point is to identify the lands that will be federated into Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, that lie now had to be given life by our own. They say we are the ones who committed our lands into the Union of Nigeria forever to be governed in this manner, dictated in this constitution. Every single provision of that constitution, including the one that gave out spare keys to the treasury, to the heads of executive branch, federal and state, including the one that gave them absolute immunity. You can see the kind of figures we are seeing all over the place. This little nasty lady that Buhari made a minister, you see them asking, they're asking her to account for 729 billion that she was giving to poor people of her own reckoning. Nigeria does not have a database on what you saw when the madness was going on. She will come out on the street and be giving people 5,000 and 10,000 in cash, and they just making a show. Today we are discussing 729 billion that passed through her hands. to the poor people she made the list of. Because if Nigeria had Nigeria had a database, you could say, okay, these are the people we identified. These are the sums we paid to them. 729 billion, and that is just one minister. Whose money was that? Is there any fraction of that money, even 1%, that was brought by Kassina, the Buhari that was mandating her? None. Look at the one they're talking about, billions of dollars that are found in account of where they were selling crude oil illicitly. And so we are saying that everything we needed to do, of course, as God will have it, the story of what became that constitution in 1979 revealed everything else that we needed to know to get free. Where in decree number 24, Absalom Abaka told the story of how he formed a committee headed by some Nikitobi that went round and came back to him to say most people wanted a return to 1979 constitution. Who did they ask? Other than their boyfriends and girlfriends. If Yoruba people were asked, they will not go back to 1979 because there was no discussion to make to be in union in 1979. If Igbo was asked, they will not go back to 1979. That was victory charter from the war of Murtala Muhammad. And so the evidence, the proof of their lie is contained in that decree number 24. We should have been out of this mess if our people listened to us even within the first 3 months in 1999. Because Absalami said, look, let me go. If I don't go now, something else will overtake all of us. When I leave, you guys can go and make constitution. These flawed characters, some of whom are now president in Abuja, they jumped in, they weakened the Nadeko that would have been concluding that business, because that was what consumed Abiola. Nadeko was the agreement between Abiola and the ones who came to help him, that if he became president, the first thing he would do was to do away with what Murtala Muhammad did in 1975, that became 79 Constitution. That was his commitment. That was what became Nadeko, and I'm not reporting it from sidelines. So that fight had been on for taking down this unworkable unitary constitution from that 1994. It was already in the 5th year by the time 99 came. Of course, they killed off Abiola in 1998, along with Abacha that was looking for other things. And so, why it took us this length of time to be able to come to where we can say this is how we'll finish it, was that before 1914, the British had worked for so long. From 1914 to 1960, they continued to work with their nominees. By 1967, they expanded it to include the Yoruba and the other people from all the other sides to gang up and beat down the East that had the oil. Of course, it was so very easy for them to fall back on old sentiments, to divide up the Niger Delta into there were people from the biggest abandoned property, the single biggest abandoned property that was seized in Port Harcourt, belongs to an Ijaw man. The Franco Pigo that brought that name in Enugu Emergency Assembly, that's the assembly, Eastern assembly that declared that decided on that Eastern region becoming Biafra. The Franco Pigo that brought that Biafra name, he used to own a secondary school in the place that became a school of arts and science. Some of you in Port Harcourt will know the place I'm talking about. That was a private secondary school that belonged to Franco Pigo. When Nigeria was seizing the properties of the Igbo in Port Harcourt, because of the fact that he stood with Biafra all through, they seized that place from him. That was how it became government property. That's how it became the school of whatever it became. Now I think it's I don't know what the college of education, whatever they're doing there now. That school you saw is still standing there. Never returned to him. Even when the man died, the governor of River State of the time, who is still alive, He refused to let his family bring him to bury him in Port Harcourt. His remains are still lying in Ikoyi prisons, Ikoyi cemetery. And you are building that Nigeria thinking it is going to get to somewhere. Changing anthem instead of calling the meeting of the people who have fundamental issues to resolve. Issue of union. You are holding them in a kidnapped setting. That's what it is. And there are flawed characters from all over the place. The ones that go to swear to depend on the 1999 constitution as governor, as senator. I'm sorry for all of them because this constitution will go down along with all the institutions, everything it created. Imo State, Abia State, River State, everybody everything that constitution created, all of them will go down with it. Every single thing you can find in the body of that constitution that represents an institution that shouldn't have been there, therefore that mentioned there. Those are the things that will go. All the provisions. The 33-year immunity clause they put in section 6, section 6D. All the atrocities they committed from January 15th in 1966 to May 29, 1999, 33 years, which was the period they shared everybody's thing among themselves, which was the period they committed the genocide they committed. They put the assets they accumulated among themselves. The assets they accumulated among themselves. Nigeria of today will be struggling to compete with them. Go and find out what they are worth. And so, every single thing that had been tormenting us is in black and white, but the foundation of it is our signature we did not append. Shame on us if we can't pull back that signature, terminate the life of that constitution, free everybody's sovereignty back to them in the manner we have lined it all up. And so, down to today's subject of the final steps to initiating the joint jailbreak and union reset. We divided up the tasks of this liberation into 6 slots. The first slot, which is taking down that constitution, 75%. That's where the whole work is. If that for the ones who were shouting Biafra, and the ones who are shouting Odua Republic, and the ones who have been beheaded in the Middle Belt, except that monster called Nigeria. I'm not talking about the Federation of Nigeria. I'm talking about the one Nigeria, the Unitary Nigeria, the Caliphate-owned Unitary Nigeria, defined by the 1999 Constitution and its earlier version in 1979. That's the Nigeria I call the monster. Nigeria, the Federation, is what everybody has been struggling to go back to. All of those who are crying about restructuring. They want a revival of Nigeria, the Federation. The war that happened in 67 to 70 was when they say on Aburi we stand. It was because the Eastern region, the governor of Eastern region, Lieutenant Colonel Odimogo Juku and his team in Aburi insisted that if we are going to resume, because Nigeria had collapsed at the time they went to that meeting in January of 1967. Nigeria had been in demise for balance of July, the whole of August, September, October, November, into December. Nobody could travel to any other part. That's if you couldn't go you couldn't go to hold a meeting in the other part, you might be killed. And so in going to that meeting, that on Aburi we stand was simply to say, if we are to resume as one political union, we must go back to the autonomy we agreed. We must then conclude the unfinished business of the distribution of the arms. The regions already had their autonomy. But the British left the guns, all the guns in the land, in the hands of the North to keep them in a position to topple everybody else. And so what Aburi was going to add to the autonomy that was already there was the redistribution of the military equipment of the Federation, so that each region will be in a position to defend itself and its people. It was that unfinished business. They agreed on how to do it. Everybody came back rejoicing that the matter is resolved. They landed in Nigeria. I'm sure you saw the video of one of these permanent secretaries of the time running his mouth about how decree number 8 will have solved all the problems. You had a situation where people were being killed for several months, and you go to a meeting and you agree on something, and then you come home read something that is written. You came home, you now abandoned it, and everybody wants to blame the Ojukwu that knew the gravity of what was going on and went with all of what he needed to negotiate what will happen to solve the problem. He didn't have any longer time than the other people. They were all invited, and they went at the same time. They sat all through, and even when they had finished the meeting, the written agreement that emerged, General Ankara read it out to them. Say, look, let us listen to it again. If anybody has anything that he wants corrected, they read it over and over, and all came to the conclusion that this is what we agree. They signed up. Ankara took them to the airport, sitting in the same vehicle with them. Ojukwu got home. He thought the worst was over, and he had a party in Enugu, in government house in Enugu, to tell our people that yes, the killings had happened this long, but now we have concluded what the British did not conclude, which created the problem in the first place. We are now going to be able to organize our affairs a little better, including our defenses. Then the permanent secretaries came, the civil servants began their story. Look at them now. They've made all the money in the world, but look at the Nigeria they created. And they have the guts to be going around talking nonsense, telling lies. Some of them in their 90s. The reason we're not talking to them, that constitution, which is the accumulation of all the atrocities both the British and themselves committed, and the military that came after them, everything they did across the last 110 years, down and out. It doesn't matter how much they try. It doesn't matter how many lunatics they gather, like Fakbomuda. It doesn't matter how many 1,000 Emeka Anyokos will not add one alphabet or subtract from what the owners of the sovereignty will decide. If they are ignorant, too bad. If they know what the issue is and they are being dishonest, worse. But our conclusion is that they are not ignorant. They are trying to evade the owners of the sovereignty. And so the flyer I began with that has 5 plus. We have done the one of 75%. The proof of our success in taking down that constitution is that today the government of Nigeria is looking for how to replace the 1999 constitution that is dead. You had Benjamin Kanu in the National Assembly say, "Oh, we're going to write another one," in his ignorance. He may be a lawyer. I don't know what he read. But he very quickly had to, when we responded to say, "Are you out of your mind? Who are you to write constitution? Because you're a National Assembly? Are you not aware that your legislative mandate does not extend to constitution making? That is a matter far above your mandate. You are a legislator to make law according to the constitution we have made. Anybody who is looking in the direction of National Assembly for anything that has to do with the constitution is an illiterate. It doesn't matter how many PhDs they have in law. You saw Lisa Bokoba telling them what to do, to go and remove one booklet and bring another booklet. Senior advocate, professor. Then they switch over to Fakbonda, who again began to write constitution before you call a meeting of the owners. They switch over to Emeka Anyoku, who say, "Oh, let us call Constituent Assembly to write constitution." For who? Where's the Nigeria? We're saying that we don't have a union, because that is what it means. That we never agreed, we never met, we never agreed, we never wrote any constitution according to the 3 false claims in that preamble. And so, who is Emeka Anyoku calling Constituent Assembly to write constitution for? What of all the Constituent Assemblies we called since 1977? Why don't we have a stable union to this date? It is because Nigeria have been avoiding the owners of the land, the owners of the sovereignty. The peoples of Nigeria have never been allowed to come to sit to agree to be in union. So it is union at gunpoint. Ask Professor Anthony Akinwale, he can explain the rest to you. So that 75% is done, and it didn't happen casually. From the time of the Pronaco to the MNN that went to court in 2007, Pronaco of the meeting of the owners of the sovereignties, 2005, 2006, Then we went to court in 2007 to say we didn't make this constitution. The system didn't understand where the matter was headed. So the MNN Lagos Declaration of June 30th, 2011, by which we mandated the nationalities, informations of their choice, because those who are talking about this geopolitical zone, I don't know the type of madness that has overtaken this land. How did we arrive at this geopolitical zone? You created states by brigandage, and then you begin to group them together to say, just trying to build a tall house, a tall building from the roof. You begin to group them together. Who told you I have accepted the Abia state you created over Arochukwu? Who told you? And then you say geopolitical zone. You group all of them together. Then for that say, oh, they all know what they are doing. It is the alliance of 1967 that is still moving, trying to keep things the way it was, deceiving those who didn't know, who don't know their left from their right in the matter being discussed. They were several miles ahead of them. That 75% is done. From the time we got to because 75%, then the 5% of the task was in the matter of going to assemble the alliances we needed. In the eastern side, that's the eastern half of southern Nigeria, we had the George Anang, the Efik, the Ogoni, the Urobo, all of them, working around their discussions for how to be a federation of their own, to be a federation of 70 million people capable of liberating the black man, which was what we have in that charter. Then the question of the alliance of the East, the West, and the Middle Belt, again, it took several years of going from Akure to Ekiti, down to Ibadan, back to Lagos and Ogbomoso, to get the Yoruba leaders of thought, including the ones overseas, to go back to what Awolowo had, if they are to be in Nigeria. And if Nigeria will not give them even that, then to take their land out of the stupid union that had failed on all fronts. At every point in time, it was clear to us that dissolution was the default. If the meetings don't yield anything, if they attempt to return everybody's sovereignty to them so that they can be in a union of their choice on the terms they agreed, at every point in time it was clear to us that the collapse of that constitution was end of union, meaning that by default your sovereignty will be back in your hand and nobody is going to be able to accuse you of any wrongdoing, how much more attacking you, because guns will be in your hand. It is this constitution that have been defeated that denied you access to gun, access to your economic assets. And we are saying that we have done 95% of the tasks. I've given you account of 75%, which is to take down that constitution. I've given you account of 5%, which is to build the alliances in the area that had a serious problem with the Biafra that came by accident. And then the other 5% is the Ninas alliance involving the 3 blocks. Another 5% is the question of what we have to get from the international circuit, international imperatives. We got all of those. By the time in 2007 we got the instrument from the UN. By the time in 2019 we went to Capitol Hill to stop this fellow from Katsina that opened our border to bring Fulani to flood all the place. It was God that made a way for us to get to where he could be stopped from, and he was stopped. That's why the Fulani did not overrun everybody. So we say international imperative 5%. Then, because there are 4 slots, 5 in all, because what is left now is the one in which we have to bring the populace into all of what we were doing. And that is, it is that populace that must now exit that caliphate prison. That populace that will now go into their freedom from the bondage they've been in for 110 years. All of what we had to do from all these 25 years, no part of it was meant for them to do. At the time we were going to Pronaco, it was the delegates that had to be dealt with. And they came in their good numbers. 164 ethnic delegations that sat for 2 years in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Enugu, in Jos, in Kano, coming to conclude in Lagos, with all the groups carrying arms against the Nigerian state at the time, persuaded to come along, keep your guns aside, let us agree, and see the mad person that will say is government to overrule all of us. Of course, Obasanjo thought he was a Superman. We brushed him aside and went on ahead with what we were doing. He saw that he could not even say anything anymore. How much more do? And so those are the things we had to do to get to where that constitution now dropped dead from that 16th of December in 2020. That we came out to say end of road for that instrument. We are not anarchists. Let everybody come. Federal government, you have 90 days to look at what we are saying. As they were discussing, we had to talk to the sub-unit nationalities, the states, say, look, governor, we have no quarrel with you. The constitution by which you are governing, 30 days. While they were, playing pranks in Asaba. The 30 days passed, then we took another 180 days to go to the nationalities again to say, look, we have finished what we are doing. Can we now proceed with the enforcement, and then they began to look for how to go to election. Oh, they drafted everybody. Then P2B came from the Chatham House, and then they got to election, trying to give life back to that country. And we were telling our people, don't go. If you go, you will perish. Look at where they are now. And the matter has not even started. Things are going to go from bad to worse. Every single day that constitution remains in place is a day of saying, I want Fulani to behead me. It's a day of saying, I want poverty to bury me alive. And those who have been invited to go to election, the blood of those who have already been killed on account of that constitution will be upon you if you join in going to that election. It's a curse we are placing. The blood of those who have been killed on account of what we have spent 25 years explaining to you. If it is stupidity, you don't deserve to be alive. If it is dishonesty, you deserve to be killed. If it is ignorance, the Bible says you will perish. So either way, whether it is stupidity or dishonesty or ignorance that will make you go with anybody to any further elections in 2027 under this constitution, whether it's APC or PDP or Labour Party, those who can find Peter Obi where he is should tell him that this is what we said. No further elections will happen under this constitution, and we are prepared to get into a fight on the street with those who are summoning others to come to renew the life of this constitution by election, because that's the only way the constitution receives life. Every 4 years, the ones who will die from hunger, the ones who will be beheaded in Middle Belt, are invited to come to renew the life of that constitution, so that a few will get to government house. The ones you voted for in 2023, they are all in government house now. Compare their life with your own life, and then you will sit by and allow another group of lunatics to come and summon you to another election, and you are not chasing them from your neighborhoods. In whatever, all the political parties in Nigeria subscribe to that constitution. There is no exception. There's no one of them that is different from the other. You can see, look at all the parties where they belonged. Look at that Peter Obi. He was in ABGA. Then he was in PDP. Then he was in Labour Party. Who knows where he will go next? All of the parties subscribe to that constitution. So your situation is not about to improve if you are still hoping to go and get a good man, because the 36 states will remain, 7 and 4 local government areas will remain, 68 items of exclusive list will remain. They will go into their paradise. You will return deeper into your hell hole. That's what you have been doing every 4 years. And if after 6 electoral rounds, you've not learned any lessons, you are not willing to listen, then you truly deserve to perish. No punishment is good enough for you, because you are compromising generations unborn. This land will be lost because of your stupidity. People are being killed all over the place, so you're already guilty. You're already guilty of shedding innocent blood. If you were one of those who went to this last election, if you are one of those who went to election in 2019 or 2015 or even 2011, from after 2007 when we raised this issue, but let us leave the ignorance of the past. We tried to tell them not to go to 2023. We did our best to tell them don't go in 2023, but we didn't tell them we're going to fight with them. How you fare. Now they are seeing it. what is lying ahead, because the caliphate conquest, the Fulani conquest agenda has not abated. You see that they've come to Kainji area. The three countries, this Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, that have formed a bigger, alliance now than ECOWAS. The Fulani that were marauding all over those three countries have been chased out by those boys. They've ended up in Nigeria. Those are the ones in Kainji area. They've distributed themselves in Nigeria already. They are distributing themselves in Nigeria across already. And so, where we are is that we've done all the other things. The interface with the existing governance order. Interface, that's another 5%. Interface with the existing governance order. Many people will be wondering, why are these people doing all these kind of things, and no, the ones who are doing Biafra and the ones who are doing their Mayegun kind of characters on the Yoruba side, they are wondering, say, why are these people, nobody has ever challenged them. The Bible says you cannot plunder the house of a strong man except you first bind him. What we did for 20 years was binding the strong man when we were tackling the constitution to the ground. They didn't understand what we were doing. They were busy making noise and waving flag. But the title deed by which the land will be recovered, they didn't bother with it. The right to hold gun on that land, they didn't bother about it. They say, they're talking about constitution. Then what are you trying to topple? What are you trying to get away from? Or where do you want to enter? When the issue begins and ends with constitution, begins and ends with map, where does your territory begin? Where does it stop? What is the prevailing ultimate rule? That's constitutional arrangement in the place. Does your economic asset belong to you? In that your space? You think it's your land? Oh yes, Yoruba land, wonderful. Ijo land, wonderful. Are you the one that signed the oil concession to Chevron and Shell? Are you able to carry gun in the place if somebody comes to beat you up or kill you? Are you the one that signed limestone of Benue to you the thief? Are you the one that signed the limestone of your Benue to Dangote to be Africa's richest man? Why is it that none of your governors can issue you arms to defend yourself in whatever numbers you require those guns? That constitution is the answer for each and every one of these questions. And so if that constitution is toppled, everything it took from you automatically returns to you, pending when you make other arrangements with any other person. If you decide not to make any arrangement, you stay back in your land and manage it and govern it. That is the meaning of self-determination. You can be by yourself except you agree to be with your neighbor on terms you dictate, on terms acceptable to you. And it is not something politicians will decide. That is why it goes to referendum. That's why it is the decision of the people. And in this instance, the peoples, because we are talking about a federation, if it is until we settle that we can become the people of Nigeria. Until we settle it, we are still the peoples of Nigeria. Those are some of the things we have to explain to Emeka Anyaoku. If being a diplomat at the level I have been, he doesn't understand the difference between the people and the peoples. Go and listen to the nonsense he was spewing on June 12th at the Institute of International Affairs. And so, the reason the system had not been able to say or do anything and will not be able is because the constitution by which they draw their powers, by which they exercise their authority, is what we say is a fraud. They are the ones who have to explain to us where they are drawing power from now, and they are soon going to be face to face with that question from people who are going to be more angry than we are. Say, come on, where are you drawing the power to govern now with the demise of with the death of this constitution? Where are you drawing the power to parade yourself as governor and president? And police that will come to beat up people in all kinds of corners in the name of Nigeria that died long time ago? People are going to ask that question. And we are offering them the only safe passage left to come into transition now and give up all their claims on that fraudulent constitution, all their claims to power, all their claims to everything. You sell 3 million barrels of crude oil every day and you share the money, and the people who own the money cannot find food to eat. They are enslaved all over the world. They are running away. They are dying on the desert. They die in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to run away from you because you put their signature on a forgery and become the owner of their place, pointing guns at them in their communities. They are soon going to find out, and they won't be as patient, they won't be as diplomatic, they won't be as peaceful as we have been in putting a plan on the table by which you can resolve this matter without going into a rifle show. They're not going to take it easy with you. And so the interface with the existing governance order, all the time when we were going to Pronaco, we wrote the government. Tafa Balogun was Inspector General of Police. He wrote a letter back to us to say, I would have loved to attend, but my principal will have to approve. That is Pronaco. So at every point in time, we were in direct communication with government. When we went to court in 2007 to say this constitution is a fraud, we didn't make it. The Attorney General of the people we dragged to court, the President, Obasanjo, the Senate President, and the Clerk of House and Speaker of House of Representatives. These were the people who had to come to tell us in court how they came about the constitution by which they were holding us hostage. The Attorney General of Nigeria filed a response in that suit and said to the court, I have nothing to say. So from that point on, they were the ones committing treason against us in holding on to that constitution. Of course, along with all the ones who swear to defend and uphold that constitution, whether they are governor or senator, from that time. And so, again, you see, we are in direct interface with the government, and they come to court and join issues with us and say they have nothing to say. By the time we came to Lagos, the eminent Lagos Declaration, again, we made sure we communicated it to them, as officially as it could be. We were always on the front page of the papers to say the diplomats got their own copies of whatever we communicated. And then when the force majeure came, you witnessed all those ones. That we put it out there and we delivered their copies to them and made sure we transmitted to the UN Security Council and Trusteeship Council. Someone went to New York in 2021, September. And so, at every point in time, there was no period that the government will say it didn't know what we were saying. So, our proposition is in black and white. It's still staring at them. That's why they are running helter-skelter, looking for how to find happy and way. There is no happy and way. You are encircled. What you hear me saying now is the kind of announcement the police will make when they come to a residence where a location where there is somebody in the building that must surrender to them or be engaged by them otherwise. So those who are sitting and blowing siren and claiming they have a power and authority under a constitution that has my signature, no. What you hear now, we are telling them that you are encircled. The owners of the land that you call Nigeria, all the lands that you call Nigeria, the owners of the assets you sit in Abuja and share among yourselves, financing 812 governments with thousands of bureaucracies, while the people who own the money can, less than 1% of you, taking 99% of everything. The voice you hear now is that same kind of voice with which the police tell people in a building who must surrender to them. The surrender we're talking about is the government, the proprietors of Unitary Nigeria must now surrender to this 5-point proposition. It's a proposition of the peoples of Nigeria. They have no authority, they have no sovereignty of their own, they have no constituent powers in the National Assembly to decide anything. They must now accept to go into transition. We have not asked them to leave government house yet. We told them we can do what South Africa did in 1990, stay back in government house. But let the owners of the sovereignty go and decide whether they want to be in union and how they will be in that union. Like CODESA was set up in South Africa. That's what we're inviting them to do now. But that's the only accommodation they're going to get in this matter. It will not be stretched. And any other thing they try to do in looking for happy and way to go and do something that did not come from us will fail. And by the time it's failing, God save them that the mob that is being tormented to death now. You saw one of them climb a radio mast in Abuja yesterday, the 8th of July. Somebody climbing a tall radio mast belonging to ASO Radio to say, people are dying. I'm ready to put my life into it to get the government to see that there's something must be done urgently. And so the matter is that bad. The only thing remaining, if you go back to that flyer that is titled "Final Steps to Initiating the Joint Break," the only part of this whole project that requires the participation of the populace, we didn't need them to do Pronaco, all of them, no. The ones we needed came. We didn't need them to go to court, all the ones we needed came. The Ojukwu, the Shoyinka, the Enohoro, and all the others. We didn't need the populace to go to UN. In fact, we had to go quietly. That was the only way we could succeed. 3 people. The one speaking, Professor Wole Soyinka and Kofi Annan, who was secretary at the time, Secretary General. We didn't need the populace of Nigeria to go to Capitol Hill when we went to tell the US that was at war with ISIS that Buhari, our president and commander-in-chief, was the one receiving ISIS into the sub-region to merge with Boko Haram to form a swap. We didn't need the populace to do all of that. So the only part of this entire design that is meant for the populace is the 5% of what is remaining. When you distribute the 75% and the 5% that I've counted in 4 slots, the 1 slot remaining is this one of let the populace put aside whatever they were thinking before. Those who thought that the good man will come and provide good governance. There's no good governance coming. There's no rule of law coming under this constitution. Election will not solve your problem. Election will actually reinforce the problem like you have seen in 2023. Put aside whatever you were thinking before. Examine what we have in black and white. Listen to what is in broadcast. Listen to what is in audio visual. View it so that you can understand it very. It's already broken down to what it doesn't require more than 1 hour of paying attention to understand it fully. And when you look at that flyer that is titled "Final Steps," that's in the 3rd quarter and 4th quarter of 2024, that getting to know that all the problems you confront or that confront you where you are flow from that constitution, whether it is insecurity or corruption or mass poverty or the agitations you see or system failure or impunity or election rigging or hopelessness that has invaded you or infrastructural decay, economic free fall, the naira that is failed, everything that you see, there are sections of the constitution of Nigeria responsible for it. Nothing else will solve it. Everything you thought was ignorance. Then the solution is, if it is that one tap from which all these problems are flowing, the solution is to turn off the tap. And that is what Ninas has gone ahead of everybody to do. To decommission wholesale the 1999 constitution, taking it down. The mechanism for effecting that taking down is to shut down the possibility of another election that will renew the life of that constitution. It's like oxygen that has to be delivered. You are the one holding the hose to deliver that oxygen. You've delivered the one of 2023. You see how your life is. Ninas is saying you must now come out and make up your mind that you will not deliver that oxygen in 2027 to that constitution. If you're asking how do we take down this constitution, we are answering you now to say it is by shutting down the possibility of going to election one more time under that constitution. Some will say, okay, this is 2024. How are we going to shut down election that is built for 2027? The action you need to take now in order to shut down the life of that constitution is to demand an immediate transition now, not in 2027. We are not talking about boycott. We are talking about upfront shutdown of the plan for another election that might happen under the 1999 constitution. And so your task is to say in 2024, political parties, please, all of you, pack your baggage and leave our neighbor. Don't come to tell us about any election you are planning in 2027. Your task now is to demand an immediate transition so that we can go and begin to work out what will replace this constitution. Otherwise, dissolution. Tell them you are fed up with the union defined by that constitution. Tell them you are fed up with unitary Nigeria. If we have to be in union, it has to be a federation. And the way to go to federation is to get the constituent component, the owners of the sovereignty, into the transitioning, into the discussion, into the negotiations that will then become constitution in the sequence we have already outlined. You must identify those owners. You must allow them discuss among themselves. It is what they have agreed among themselves that will become constitution in that order. Anybody who begins by going to write a constitution already has lost the people. Anybody who begins by saying, oh, Constituent Assembly or some kind of a meeting or go and write a constitution, the type of madness of Fakmoda is carrying around, that is like starting a house from the roof. The quarrel of everybody quarreling, even since 1966, even since Abori, is to say, let the owners of the sovereignty be the ones to decide. Let them be the custodians of their sovereignty, even if they are to be in union. Has Germany lost its sovereignty because it's in union with Portugal in the European Union? Has France lost its sovereignty? No. You saw them conducting election the other day. Was it the business of any other country? You saw the one of UK. Was it the business of any other country? Our federation is a union of sovereignties. Federation is a union of constitutions. And so we agreed to be a federation. Some people toppled it and seized our sovereignty. Unfortunately for them, after they dragged it around in 1999, they put our signature on it to say we are the ones who submitted it to them. And that is what we have decapitated now. It is that claim that we have beheaded. The only reason you are still sitting in your pain, in your misery, in your hopelessness is because you did not know that the prison gates have been swung open. When in 2020 we were heading to the force majeure, information got to the man who midwifed that constitution called Awalu Yadudu, quota professor. Information got to him that the owners of Nigeria were going to launch a force majeure. He immediately called the press conference to try to get the Buhari government to stop whatever they could do to stop it, because he said that if that step is taken, that the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria will be unhinged. I'm quoting him now, and it's in the Guardian newspaper of the time, I think sometime in July of 2020, before the December, because we were consulting. Corona COVID-19 had slowed down all kinds of movements, and so it took a longer time for us to be able to consult all of those who need to sign up to that, the leaders of all the blocks that will sign up to that force majeure proclamation. And so it was in that period of consultation, somehow maybe somebody confided in him, and he went out to say that if this happens, it will unhinge the legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria. That means that will be the end of union. Nobody will be able to do anything about it. Of course, he didn't know how much trouble Buhari was already in at the time he was inviting him to that action, because we had returned. We just came back from the US in August of 2019. At the time, Buhari had already he was living on borrowed time. You know, at that time, he couldn't even say anything. How much more do? Because Nigeria had been put on the list of countries of particular concern. What that meant was that the US had informed the whole world that the people operating in Nigeria have stepped on our national security toes, and we have notified them when Nigeria was put on the watch list. That was the notification. You have to stop this. When they didn't listen, they now put Nigeria as country of particular concern. That was the offense of General Soleimani. You remember General Soleimani that was taken out of Iran, that was taken out from Afar? It was because he was the one organizing the terror that was issuing from Iran. Muhammadu Buhari was at the center of whatever you could credit to Fulani herdsmen, fourth most deadly terrorist group on earth. Boko Haram, he was their spokesman when they were tormenting Jonathan. He was the one they nominated to speak for them. Buhari is still life grand patron of Miyetti Allah. Miyetti Allah takes responsibility very proudly for what Fulani herdsmen are doing. So on what count, Buhari as commander-in-chief, president, the one who is supposed to be watching over my back, he dipped hands into the treasury, took 100 billion naira and handed over to Mieti Allah to add into their cattle business, which they used to buy weapons. He was the one that threw our borders open to say everybody could come, and then Fulani poured in from everywhere, killing, maiming, raping, rampaging. And so we're informing us that all of that matter has come to where what Yadudu raised alarm about has happened. The force majeure was activated. You saw the implementation through the last 4 years. Those who went to election have seen the outcome of their election. The constitution has not been healed. The suffering has not been abated. The killings is not going down, it's going up. And so that legal basis of the Federation of Nigeria stands unhinged. If a door is unhinged, you know the hinge of a door, remove all the hinges. What is the value of the lock on the other side if the hinge is removed? The prison gate in which you are held is unhinged by the constitutional force majeure activated since December 2020. The only thing left to be done now, because we have to cover all the other grounds to minimize the danger to anybody, to everybody. The only thing that has to happen now is that you must stand up, except you want to die in your misery. You must stand up now and declare that you must demand a transition now. And that brings us to the 5-point proposition of NINAS. It is in understanding these 4 things in the first 4 boxes that constitution is the source of all your problems. That the solution to all your problems is to take down that constitution. And that the mechanism for doing it is to shut down the journey to another election so that we can go to that transition immediately. The action that you now need to take, having known the first 3 things, is to demand that transition or immediate union. The union dissolution does not require any meeting. Union dissolution is that Yoruba can stay back in Yoruba land and declare that they will not go to Abuja to do any other business. Ijo can stay back in Ijo land. In the face of the collapse of that constitution, their land is back in their hand, including all the guns they may need to defend themselves in that space. If the people sitting in Abuja refuse to turn up and take advantage of the little of the accommodation, we actually have to be convincing some people to accept what we are offering them. Those who are going to be more angry than us are not going to even want any transition. They are looking at Kenya. They are thinking of what to do. They saw Burkina Faso, they saw Niger. But we say we have done too much work to allow anybody to spill anybody's blood at this time. If our people will stand up and do what we ask them to do, just say it. We've not asked you to do any other thing at this time. Say it loudly. Face the political parties and tell them that you will not go to another election. Begin to shout it from the rooftop, the same way we are shouting it now. Begin to shout it everywhere you are, to say that no further election will be tolerated by you in your space under this constitution. That's all we have asked you to do. Do it and see that whether in 3 months anybody will still be sitting and giving you order from afar. We'll be in transition, and at that point, your sovereignty is back in your hand. It is what you do with it that will then follow. It is in understanding these 4 things we have told you that you can understand why NINAS in the first point of demand says there must be an acknowledgement of the grievances that have become union dispute. So it becomes your demand. NINAS has said this in 2020. You didn't join. That's why they've been dragging you around. Now it has to be your demand that those who are operating Nigeria under that constitution must now acknowledge that this is what the problem is. Our second demand to say that constitution has to be decommissioned wholesale must become your demand. That you want that constitution decommissioned wholesale, not any kind of amendment, not any kind of thing that will go to National Assembly. Our point number 3 demand is we cannot proceed to another election under that constitution. It must now become your demand, not NINAS's demand. You join as an indigenous nationality to say that we must go to transition now. It becomes your demand. Then in item 4, that thing that Nigeria from the time of Britain in 1914 have been doing to avoid you coming to the table is what item 4 of the NINAS propositions settles for you. two-stage procedure, which I've already explained. Yoruba will sit in Yoruba land by internal referendum of theirs, agree to be in union with anybody else. Then in the second layer, other people who have equally done the same regional referendums, agreeing to be in union, will then come in the second layer to federate on their own terms. Any other thing anybody tries to do will exclude you, because they're going to invite their friends to come and gather in some place. The type Emeka Anyoko is asking them to do 5 delegates per state. How did we come about the state? That we'll now be talking about 5 delegates per state. What is wrong in calling Yoruba and Ijo and the owners of the sovereignties that the British got swindled in 1914? Why have they been avoided? You are your own, to be control of your own. The charters, the documents, the drafts of everything that is needed to bring these outcomes are already in place. It's not something that this already done. That's why we told the system we have encircled you. There's nothing you can do. Any side you try to run away from, you're going to meet people who beat you back. Your only choice, the best thing you can do with your life now is to surrender to this plan that accommodates you in government house for the period of that discussion. And so you now come to item 5 that says a formal announcement. A formal announcement, time-bound announcement for the transition. These 5 points of Nina's must now become the demand of the populace that wants to leave the prison of the caliphate called Unitary. Is the 5% left. We have done 95% of the work. We have taken unquantifiable risks on your behalf, and God shielded us. God gave us victory over principalities and powers, including the British, the owners of the enterprise, including against the caliphate, including against the alliance of 1967, including against the constitution they imposed since 1975, if not 67. And so, are you prepared to march out of that prison gate? If you do what we ask you to do now, we're just at the beginning of July. I tell you, in that third quarter, July, August, September, we should be already in that transition if you do the little part we ask you to do. And the day we get into that transition, your sovereignty is in your hand. Those who now want union with you will be the ones begging you to please come along on whatever terms. But if you don't do it, I can assure you that the Fulani that will take your land are already encircling you in your community. Those are the two choices before you. If you do it, nobody is going to be able to shoot at you, including those Fulani, because the guns will be in your hand before they shoot at you. If you don't do it, get ready to receive them at your doorstep. We stop here. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Nadi, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Your expertise and commitment are truly inspiring. Okay, it's time for your feedback, questions, and comments. I welcome at this point. I can see Reverend Salami. Okay. Reverend Salami, please accept the invite. Reverend Salami, Alajita Judin, please hold on. Reverend Salami, please, you have the floor now.
I'm done that. Well, once again, I just want to thank our spokesman. The Lord will continue to strengthen him. And I to assure you that all of us, we are behind you. We will not betray you. Just continue to move on. And what you have said tonight is the summary and is the energizer we all need. Our victory is at the corner. May God continue to bless you and encourage you. In Jesus' name. Thank you. That's all I want.
Amen. Amen. Alajita Judin, please, you have the floor.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, that's all right. We are blessed with Tony Unadi. God will, because of we, crisis, please strengthen him, prolong him, elongate his life in good health.
Thank you, sir. Justina, will you kindly provide some closing remarks to summarize our key points? Justina, please, you have the floor to summarize the key points. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I want to say a very big thank you to our spokesperson. Thank you so much, sir, for not giving up on us, Thank you for being consistent. You know, I had to go through the latest 3 videos. They were so lifting that I knew that we really have a task and we're moving on by the grace of God. Thank you so much, sir. God bless you. Tonight's meeting, the things that will not change no matter who becomes president of Nigeria, even if Joe Biden, even if Jesus Christ comes with this illicit constitution that
Maybe you have to leave
against the people.
Justina, please, you're breaking. Justina, please, you're breaking. Justina, please, you're breaking. Just leave and come back, please. Justina, you have the floor. Thank you. Go ahead, Justina.
Okay, so sorry. We said the problems that we're going through. It is this constitution that is the source of all our woes and all our cries. One of the problems is the electricity that we don't have, which is making people to lose jobs. Common electricity is a very big problem to Nigerians. The petroleum subsidy removal, and why we don't even have petrol, why we're buying crude oil we're buying a PMS in such an exorbitant price. Just recently, I was reading a report, and the NNPC said that they spent $2.16 million in cotton. How can a man, the analogy that was in our video, a man that has a big tree, he will sell his tree cheaply to people, and these people will go and produce beautiful furniture with it, and he will be impoverished. He will not even be able to buy those furnitures anymore. That is the state that we find ourselves. They lied again and said, the NPC said Nigerians are using 61 million liters of PMS daily. I begin to imagine that this again is a very big lie. Of course, Nigeria is sustained by lies and propaganda. The leaders of Unitary in Nigeria are so insensitive. They deliberately impoverish us without any empathy. Now we're going through another problem, the way we're seeing all the things we're going through. The election that is centralized, that people have to control from one caliphate. I begin to understand why all of them, like my state in River State, all of our former governors are always wanting to be president of Nigeria. How do we go and take and be coronated with flag dressing like Northerners? All these things begin to explain the things we're going through. The insecurity that we cannot protect ourselves and our ammunition is still on that exclusive list. The reason why it's difficult for them to even talk about the community police. Tonight, we've just known that the constitution is our problem, and the solution is that we cannot go to further elections. And we have to join in declaring that United rights. These elections cannot solve our problems, and we have to go into transitioning. Thank you so much. I yield the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Justina, for that closing remark. Ms. Alade, please, do you have any final thoughts for today before the announcement?
Yeah, thank you. In closing, I will request all who have listened to this to please go and print those flyers, those graphics titled "Final Steps to Initiating Joint Jailbreak and Union Reset." You can print it in A3, that's the size of newspaper, in color, so that you can place it on the, anybody who has to be told that this is what we need to do now to finish this task. We've already done, the prison gate is wide open. What we have left is to use this particular flyer front and back, let people print everywhere, let people begin to print it everywhere they are, everywhere you can find Nigerians. Print it and place it on the table, whether it's professor of law or senior advocate or banker or lawyer or anybody who could write a receipt in the market, anybody who can write, invoice correctly is able to understand what is there.